wanna know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Country Roads Webcast, brought to you by Trio 4 Productions, here today to recap the Mountaineers' 5th game of the 2018 West Virginia football season as they defeat the Kansas Jayhawks 38-22 on Saturday in Morgantown. It was the homecoming game, and it was also a gold rush, and so it was good to see the Mountaineers get out there on homecoming wearing those all-gold uniforms and get the win and move to 5-0 overall in the season and 3-0 in Big 12 play. We've got a great show coming for you today. We're going to be joined again by our man in the stands here at the Country Roads Webcast, Steven Vestal, and me and him are going to discuss this game in better detail and really review and recap this game and talk about the statistics and some of the things that have come out from the fan base in the past couple of weeks that we really want to touch on. That you know, some things are kind of a little bit of overreactions, we feel, and we want to touch on that, as well as our feeling about this team thus far in the season, and why everybody just needs to calm down and realize that the sky's not falling, and really just enjoy this season as it's happening, because it's turning out like it may be a really great season for the West Virginia Mountaineers, and one that doesn't come along all the time. And so really just need to relish in it and, you know, not take it for granted and enjoy it as it comes, and take it game by game and enjoy these wins that the Mountaineers have racked up thus far in the season, being undefeated, as well as, you know, a lot of people don't realize West Virginia is the only team in college football this season that has not trailed at any point in any game yet this season. So we really need to enjoy what this team's doing and what they're capable of going forward as well. Having said that, let's just get into a little brief summary of this game before I get into our segment with our man in the stand, Steven Vestal. Let's talk about the scoring plays for the West Virginia Mountaineers in this one and where they came from. West Virginia kicked off their scoring in the first quarter with a 15-yard touchdown pass from Will Greer to Lady Brown, and that put the Mountaineers up 7-0. Then Lady Brown got in the end zone again for the Mountaineers' second score, this time from 1 yard out, and that put the Mountaineers up 14-0, and that also was in the first quarter. Then into the second quarter, Will Greer found tight end Giovanni Haskins for a 14-yard touchdown pass to put the Mountaineers ahead 21-7, and that was the first career touchdown for the Miami tight end transfer Giovanni Haskins. So it was great to see him get in the end zone for the first time in his Mountaineer career. Then also into the third quarter, the Mountaineers got into the end zone with another Will Greer touchdown pass, this time a 12-yarder to Martell Pettaway. So there you see 2 touchdown passes to running backs in this game and 1 to the tight end. So Mountaineers really spreading the ball around and getting touchdown receptions from different places, as you see, you know, the running backs getting involved in the passing game as well as the tight ends, and that's great to see this season that we've seen up to this point. And then also the Mountaineers in the fourth quarter got their scoring started with a career-long field goal for Evan Staley, which was a 49-yarder, and that put the Mountaineers up 31-14. And then the Mountaineers would add one more score in the form of another Will Greer touchdown pass, this time a 17-yarder to his favorite red zone weapon, David Seals, to put the Mountaineers up 38-14. And there would be just about 2 minutes on the clock from there, and West Virginia defense would put in a lot of their reserves, a lot of second and third stringers on the field, get them some action. And Kansas actually left their starters in for that series, so say what you will about that, but they took that ball and drove down the field and scored with no time left on the clock, and also added a 2-point conversion, which is where we got our final score of 38-22. The West Virginia Mountaineers win this one. So, you know, if the Mountaineer starters would have stayed in, Kansas likely doesn't get that score, and we see a 38-14 ball game. But Kansas chose to leave their starters in for that one and add one more score for whatever reason. But we won't get into that right now. But West Virginia wins, and that's the most important thing you can take away from this game. And they remain undefeated on this season. So great win, and still undefeated season thus far, undefeated overall, and undefeated in Big 12 play. Got a top 10 team in the country here in our West Virginia Mountaineers, and you got to love that, and you got to love the way the season's playing out thus far, and hopefully they can continue to string some more wins together. So that's just a brief summary of this game a little bit, and we're going to get more into detail with it, and a little bit more into the statistics, and a little bit more into our reactions from this game and reactions up to this point in the season as well, as we get a more in-depth review and recap of this game, as we get set to be joined by our man in the stands here at the Country Roads Webcast, Steven Vestal. So got a great segment coming up here. Stay tuned to the Country Roads Webcast. All right, as promised here on the Country Roads Webcast, we are joined again by our man in the stands, Steven Vestal. Been a little bit, Steven. How you been, man?
Well, I've been pretty good. How you been, brother?
I can't complain. You know, same old same. Enjoying this undefeated season so far.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so you was at the game. What was the atmosphere like? And maybe give us some of your thoughts and a little bit of takeaway you had from the game.
I thought the atmosphere was pretty good. Going into the game, I didn't really know what to expect, being we were playing Kansas. We've really not had too good of a turnout in years past for that game, but this week being homecoming and they set it up for a gold rush, I think it helped fans come out to that game. The takeaways that I have from the game, people, you know, during the game, you hear people talk about it and everything, seeing Will Greer's turnovers and everything. Everybody's talking about how it kind of killed his Heisman hopes. But I honestly don't think that it killed him that much. Everybody wants to, I guess in the fan base, we magnify things. We focus on all the turnovers and all the bad things that we've seen. But I guess, focusing on the national side, I don't think that it's going to be that bad. He still had four passing touchdowns, and I think he threw for 332.
Yep.
So that's really good. If you don't focus on the turnovers, he still had a stellar game. Especially he did all that in the second quarter, and I think minus the fumble that he had in the third quarter, I think he come out and he really did a really fantastic job of recovering in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing you can say about the West Virginia fan base in general is that they're hypercritical at times for sure, and I think that they, I don't know, they're used to being let down in the past maybe, so they're always just kind of expecting it and jumping on it when they see it or something. But I'm with you. I think it's a bit of an overreaction for sure. He had the turnovers, but those games are going to happen when you got a quarterback like Will that can thread the needle, and it's kind of almost like Brett Favre. Brett Favre's the all-time leading touchdown passer in the NFL, but he's also got the most interceptions. It's when you have that type of quarterback that's a gunslinger and thinks he can make every throw, you're going to have a game like that every now and then. And I think at least it was against Kansas and got that out of the way in a game like that, and than rather it being in a big-time matchup. But I'm with you. I don't think it killed his Heisman hopes at all. He's only got 6 interceptions on the year versus 21 touchdowns, almost 2,000 yards in only 5 games. So he's still in the Heisman race and up there. And the Heisman's not won in September or October anyway. It's won in November. So I think going forward, he's still got a chance to do some good things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When you look at, I know you don't really want to compare teams, but if you look at what we've done in the past, Geno Smith won the Heisman in September back then, and then
right.
We went on to lose 6 straight games, so or 7 if you count the bowl game.
Exactly. Just take it game by game, and the most important thing is to get the wins, and that's one thing Will Greer's done throughout his career here, and especially this season, being undefeated. So, talking more about statistics, let's look at some of the team stats in this game. Total yardage-wise, West Virginia put up 509 yards in this game. Some people thought the offense was sloppy, but still putting up 509 yards is always great, especially when you got a defense playing as good as West Virginia's is, as they held Kansas to only 286 total yards. Passing yardage-wise, West Virginia had the 332, Kansas only 206. Rushing yards, West Virginia had 177 and held Kansas to only 80 rushing yards, which was big after the day that Kansas had run the ball in West Virginia last year, and shows just how much improved this defense is, as they only allowed Kansas to get 80 rushing yards. In the red zone, West Virginia was 5 of 8 in this game, and I mentioned that because coming into this game they had 100% scoring rate in the red zone, so this is the first time they've not scored in every possession they've had in the red zone in the three mishaps they had were those 3 turnovers. So I think they'll bounce back from that going forward, though, and get back to scoring in the red zone. Sacks is a thing you need to look at in this one because West Virginia did give up 3 sacks. Or 5 sacks, rather, excuse me. And then turnovers, West Virginia did have 4 turnovers compared to Kansas's 3. So looking at those team statistics, any of those numbers jump out at you, or any of those that you want to dive further into?
I think the sacks numbers really jump out at me when the offensive line, as much hype as we've given them in the preseason and during the season, I think they've done a great job up to this point. But I think that the miscues and things like that, maybe not all of them were on the offensive line, but I think 95% of them really were. Because when you look at it, I think 2 of those interceptions, in my opinion, were not so much more of him trying to thread the needle in there as I would credit to him not having time to, get the pass off, and as opposed to not having time for the play to develop.
Yeah,
that really, to me, that really
I can agree with that.
Really jumps out at me.
Oh yeah, it's the offensive line had played great all season, like you mentioned, and then second half of that last game against Texas Tech, you've seen some of that same stuff kind of happen, and I think that a big part of it is the tackles for West Virginia, left and right tackle, are both very solid. But the left guard play's been pretty good, but center and right guard has been kind of shaky. So people have seen that, I think, against Texas Tech, and they're attacking that interior of that offensive line, especially in this game where West Virginia was playing essentially their third-string right guard and Isaiah Hardy, with Joe Brown being out, and then Chase Barrett dealing with an injury in this one as well. So hopefully getting those 2 guys back, I think they'll both probably be back for this game, will help that offensive line play a lot, because they're going to definitely need to perform better than they did in this one going forward in the season, and try and keep Will Greer upright in that pocket and give him more time, because, I think a lot of this game he was running for his life, and that kind of led to some of these turnovers and him having to get rid of the ball quicker than he needed to. So definitely the sacks numbers are going to have to come down going forward.
Absolutely agree.
All right, let's look at the stats from some of the offensive players. Will Greer, we mentioned, had the 332 yards passing. He went 28 of 41, 4 touchdowns, of course the 3 interceptions. Letty Brown had a great game, maybe his best game as a Mountaineer yet. 11 carries, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Also had the 1 catch for 15 yards and a touchdown. Kennedy McCoy had 10 carries for 44 yards. Martell Petaway had 8 carries for 31 yards and 2 receptions for 16 yards and 1 touchdown. Receiving-wise, David Sills had 7 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. Marcus Sims had 2 catches for 57 yards. T.J. Simmons had his highest receptions game as a Mountaineer, 6 catches for 53 yards. Gary Jennings had 4 catches for 53 yards as well. Trevon Wesco managed 2 catches for 15 yards, and Javani Haskins had 1 catch for 14 yards, and it was a touchdown. So tight ends getting involved there a little bit as well. Looking at those offensive statistics, who would you say is your player of the game offensively in this one?
I think Letty Brown really showed what he was capable of in this game. I think he's got to be my choice. I really would love to choose if this was an offensive group of the game. I would really choose the whole backfield, because I know leading into this game, I've seen a lot of people on social media saying that from the Kansas side of things, saying that West Virginia didn't really have a run game. So I thought it was nice to kind of come in there and show them that we did, and we really did run the ball down their throats all day long, because the passing game just didn't seem to be. I know Greer ended up with 4 touchdowns passing, but it just, watching the game, it didn't seem like we had a passing game all day long. So it was nice to see that we had a running presence.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mentioned going into this game, I thought the run would be what was available, and Kansas would kind of drop a lot of people into coverage and play against the pass, and that's just what they did. And the Mountaineers were able to get the run going, especially in the second half when they really needed to do it and to use it to pull away as they were defending the pass. And I agree with you. My player of the game in this one is also Letty Brown. I mentioned it may have been his best game as a Mountaineer yet. He had the rushing touchdown and the receiving touchdown. So it was his first career multi-touchdown game. And he also had the longest run of the season yet for the Mountaineers when he broke that 47-yarder there in the second quarter. So great to see great performance from Letty Brown. He gets my player of the game also. Let's flip over to the defensive side now. Mention some of these stats. David Long, another great game from him, another double-digit tackle game. 10 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss. Derek Pitts had a big game, filling in a bandit safety for Toyus Avery, who was also injured now for this game. So Pitts has moved to corner this season, but slid back to that bandit safety role in a short week of practice, and just did it in 1 week, and had a great performance in doing so. 8 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and 1 sack. Javani Stewart, 3 tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss and a sack. Hakeem Bailey, 3 tackles, 1.5 tackles for a loss and an interception. Kenny Bigelow, 2 tackles, 1 TFL, and 1 sack. And Ezekiel Rose had 1 interception. Going over those numbers, who do you got as your player of the game defensively in this one?
I'm going to have to go with Derek Pitts. I've been pretty high up on him for a couple weeks now. I think he's done a great job of filling in for Toyus Avery the last couple weeks. And he just seems like he's all over the field all game long. Him and David Long both.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to agree with you again. Went the same route on both these players of the game, but Derek Pitts, for sure, just the way he stepped up and filled in with that safety role after playing corner most of the season has been really great, and maybe has been one of his best games of his career up to this point. 3 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 8 tackles total. So he really performed well, and I think that he's got a bright future going forward, whether it's at safety or corner. Either way, I think he's going to have a bright future and has potential at either spot they choose to play him at going forward. But I think we'll see him move more back to corner this season when with Toyus Avery coming back. He's expected back for this next game. But, he may bounce back to safety again next season. But either way, he's got potential, and he's good enough athlete to play either one of those positions.
Yeah, I think it's great that we have the flexibility on defense to play those guys at other positions, because if you look at it, a bunch of these guys have been switched around throughout the season or even before the season. We mentioned it with Javani Stewart switching to outside linebacker from the safety position, and then now Derek Pitts. And then there's a couple other guys on the defensive line that I know switched around too. I just think it's nice to have that flexibility on defense when last year we didn't, have a relative defense at all. So
absolutely, it's great to see the depth that West Virginia's really developed over the past few years, because that's been a problem with them in the past, and now it's been next man up at any position when somebody's hurt or like you see in this game, Josh Norwood suspended for the targeting call last game, and you seen Hakeem Bailey step up and play a great game, maybe the best one of his career up to this point as well, getting the big interception that he got there in this one, and played well at that corner spot. And that being said, let's talk about the play of the game in this one. The play of the game that I'm going with is the Will Greer scramble for the first down to keep the drive alive in the third quarter on 3rd and 5, when a couple guys looked like they had him dead to rights in the backfield, and he scrambled out of there and ran up, got a first down, slid, got his helmet taken off, no penalty, but that was a great play that really ignited the Mountaineer offense and ignited the team and got them going in that second half, and just showed how tough Will is.
Greer was looking for Simmons, who slipped. And now Greer's got nowhere to go, escapes, picks up a block, and Will Greer, the improv for the first down!
Any thoughts?
Yeah, that one was definitely fun to watch.
Absolutely. It was kind of like there wasn't a lot of energy going on from the team, and then that play happened, and Will got everybody fired up and got everybody else fired up, and then it led to a touchdown for the Mountaineers later in that drive, and then they never really looked back from there. And I think that you can look at that as kind of the turning point of the game, where the Mountaineers finally got ignited and pulled away in this one.
Oh yeah. I think for my play of the game, it's kind of a bittersweet one. Also including Will Greer, I think it was whenever he threw that interception down there near the goal line, and the guy was going for a pick six, he was headed for a pick six, and Greer chasing down on the sideline and had a touchdown saving tackle. I choose that as my play of the game because if he hadn't made that tackle, that puts Kansas in a very good spot to tie the game and make it, more of a football game than it already was. And so I think that one really kind of held them back from coming back any further than they did.
3rd and goal. Let's see if they go to Sills. Looking for Sills. It's intercepted. Hassan Defense is second of the game. He's got one man to beat. Defense taken down.
Absolutely. It's one of those plays that, doesn't really, show up in the box score or anything like that. But it's a play that's a game changer, just because, like you said, that guy was going for a touchdown, and Will Greer really surprised some people, I think, with the speed he showed on that one, running all the way and getting an angle and taking that guy down. An impressive athleticism from Will Greer, and also real smart by him to not give up on the play after he threw the interception and to chase the guy down, and made a big difference for sure.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes about the kind of heart that he has, because he had already had how many turnovers up to that point, and I think anybody else would have put their head down and kind of started heading towards the sidelines. It really speaks volumes, kind of heart of a line, I guess.
Absolutely, he's a winner and he wants to win, and that's all. That's one of the best things you can say about Will Grier is he's tough and gritty, and he wants to win.
Absolutely, it's what you want out of your quarterback.
Absolutely. Like we mentioned a little bit earlier, but I want to talk for a second about the West Virginia fan base. I feel like, West Virginia, we've got the best fans in the world, but we also have what can be at times the most critical fans in the world. I say that because, last week the West Virginia's offense in the second half didn't perform that great, and coming off that game, the fans were almost down on the team. And this game, I think a lot of people thought that they would blow Kansas out and maybe score more points than they did, and wasn't really the performance they was hoping for and envisioning. And I think that after both those weeks, it kind of feels like the fan base is almost like treating it as if they lost or something. And I just want to talk for a minute about that, because I think that's just ridiculous. I think it's a big overreaction, and I think our fans are being far too critical of this team. I think that anytime you're 5-0 is great, and I think that, like I said earlier, our fans, maybe they're just used to being let down, so they're trying to kind of brace themselves for that going forward, because you see fans saying things like, if they keep performing like this, we won't be undefeated long, and just being extra hypercritical of the team's play thus far. And I think that really what our fan base should be doing right now is just enjoying this season and relishing in the moment, because you don't see great seasons like this ever so often by the Mountaineers, and we should just be taking it game by game and enjoying these wins, especially when we come out on top. A win is a win is a win, and I can't understand why our fan base wants to be so down on this team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I said, throughout the game you hear everybody talking, and they talk about, they don't want to hear anything about Will Grier, winning the Heisman anymore because of all these turnovers, and they get critical of the offense not being as good as everybody hypes them up to be, and they spit out all these different types of things, and I don't understand it, because we play, according to their standards, that bad, and I don't even think we played that bad. I'm just, how they portray it to be that bad, and you still win by multiple touchdowns. I've always said that West Virginia has one of the most cynical fan bases in the entire country. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that will ever change. I can only hope that it will, but yeah, I absolutely, totally, 100% agree. I think that right now West Virginia is in a good position, being 5-0. I strongly believe that they'll be 7-0 heading into November. I just think that, like you said, that the way things have gone for West Virginia in the past, they get into these big game situations and they blow it. But I have to disagree that that this team is anything like those teams, because those teams, we didn't have depth, we didn't have the size, we didn't have the type of caliber players to compete with the Oklahomas and these Texas teams. Even when Texas has been down, West Virginia has lost to them. I think two times out of the last 4 years they've lost to them. And this year, I finally believe that West Virginia does have that caliber team to compete with these teams. And you can see it when you watch them. And I think anyone that has been smart about football can actually see that we are going to be good. But I just think that the naysayers are the ones that they may watch the game, but they don't understand what all goes into, being a competitive elite football team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe I'm just an optimist, but the way I look at it is I look at it from the other side of it, that, they're critical of what this offense has done and stuff. But, this offense hasn't put together a game where they played great for 4 quarters yet, and you've won basically every game by double digits except the Texas Tech game. You won that one by 8. So, still a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. You won that one by, and Texas Tech got a late score in that one. So, virtually almost every game by double digits, and your offense hasn't put together their best game yet. So, I think that, to me, it speaks more to the potential that this team has and how much they can still continue to improve going forward. And the fact that they're undefeated is really speaks volumes about how good of a team that this is and how good of a team that this can be going forward.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned the Texas Tech game. People want to get down about that one. I personally thought that it was a great job of our guys kind of showing heart in the later game situation, because Texas Tech is not a bad football team. They were coming off of a win. They had a rowdy crowd when we were playing down there. We took them out of the game in the first quarter, and then after that, I think our guys kind of maybe did get complacent, but I thought we did a really good job of staying in there and not letting them come all the way back. Our defense showed great. They did a great job of holding Texas Tech when they needed to, and I really do feel like we have a great football team.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's a game that, talking about that Texas Tech game, that's a game that maybe, 2-3 years ago, West Virginia doesn't win that game. Texas Tech drives down and scores on that last drive, ties it up, would probably lose in overtime. But this team West Virginia has now has veteran players, has chemistry, and has heart. And they have one of the better defenses that I've seen, and that defense stepped up and made a play when they really need to. And I just feel like that's the type of team that West Virginia has this year, that when it comes down to it and the game's on the line, somebody in this team is going to step up and make a play and do what it takes to get the win.
Exactly. And even if you want to do focus on the bad things about this past weekend with Greer's 4 interceptions, I think the defense played a great game. I thought they played lights out, even if it is against a bad team like Kansas. Our defense showed tremendous heart. This is by far and away a way better defense than we've had in years past.
Absolutely. See, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the next thing I kind of wanted to get to, is that every time somebody talks about West Virginia, they talk about the offense and they talk about Will Greer and the receivers, and rightfully so. West Virginia has a great offense, but I think that's kind of overshadowed this defense this year. This defense that West Virginia has is really special, I think, this year. It's one of the better defenses we've seen in a long time, I do believe. Like I said, they've been making plays, and in that Kansas game, they held Kansas under 300 yards of total offense, and essentially 14 points, as Kansas got that last touchdown and 2-point conversion on the second and third stringers. So essentially the first team offense held them to 14 points, under 100 rush yards, under 300 yards of total offense. And the Mountaineer defense right now is only giving up 18.6 points per game on the season. Number 1 scoring defense in the Big 12. Also number 1 in tackles for loss in the Big 12, right under 10 a game. And they're top 2 in just about every defensive category in the Big 12. So this defense is really playing lights out right now, and with the team that West Virginia has and the offense that West Virginia has, that's going to really make this team do great things going forward, I think, because I think if you keep a team under 30 points, under 25 points, this West Virginia offense is going to score that many points. So if this defense keeps up the way that they're playing now and holds teams in the 20s, under 30 and in the 20s and stuff, West Virginia's going to win a lot of football games this season. And what do you think of the biggest differences in this defense, and how much have they impressed you, and how good do you think this defense is? Can they keep this up?
Like I said, by far it's night and day from last year's defense to this year's defense. Even if you want to compare them to multiple years back, this defense has I think they've used how bad that people have talked about them. How I think they've kind of shown that they've been disrespected by people, and they've got something to prove this year, because it just seems like every third play that you watch, they've got a tackle in the backfield for a loss, and they do give up those long yardage plays where they go over the top. There was one play that was they dropped every single person in the cover this past weekend, and they still completed the pass. So they still give up these silly kind of plays, but overall the defense is much more sound. They attack the ball better. They seem to be more excited, play with more enthusiasm. They're fun to watch. It seems like in years past to me, and just on a personal level, when you watch the team, you get really excited when you watch the offense go out there. And then whenever you got to go and you got to get the defense back out there, it's kind of like you're ready to be bored until the ball switches hands again. But this year, it's like at all times you're ready to see some an exciting play happen. Like, for example, when's the last time you've seen a nose guard get an interception?
Yeah, exactly.
With Ezekiel. When you, even in person watching it, I didn't even know what happened on the play. I had to ask a few guys around me, and even in the replay, you don't really realize it. But, that's just how exciting these guys are and how good that they are. Because, everything aside, that reaction time to get that interception, I think that really is...
Oh, yeah, it was phenomenal.
A better play than what you would see in years past, I guess.
Absolutely. That's the thing about this defense is, like you mentioned, that one play they dropped 11 into coverage, and Tony Gibson said in the post-game press conference that was his fault, that it was a stupid call. He thought they was going to run a screen, and so he dropped 11 into coverage and went man-to-man. But that play aside, even when West Virginia's giving up plays like this, they're very resilient and they bounced right back. And when teams have put drives together, they've shown the ability to stop the teams when they get close to scoring and force them into field goals. And they've shown the ability to, when teams get into third downs, they're stopping them on them third downs and getting them off the field. And this defense is just really exciting to see because of how fast they play and how they run all over the field, like you said. And it's fun to watch. It is. When you're watching the defense, you got it in your feeling that they're going to get this stop that they need, or they're going to get this turnover that they need. And in years past, you would just be worried, antsy, like, oh man, they're going to score on us again. But now it's like you're expecting it. You're expecting the defense to get the stops, and you're expecting the defense to make the plays. And that's an awesome change. And I really love what I'm seeing from this defense.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think we're going to be 7-0. And watching some of these teams around the league, Texas, Oklahoma, I know Oklahoma lost this past weekend, but they're still a team to watch, obviously. Texas is going to be a good game down there. I really do think that we have a strong chance to finish this season undefeated if we keep playing the way that we have been. Because Oklahoma, as good as they are, I don't think that they have the defense to keep West Virginia's offense from scoring. No. And I think if we play with the kind of firepower that we've had on both sides of the ball, we have a really strong chance of beating every single team in the Big 12.
Absolutely, and I think that I've seen a lot of people talk about how that they think it's crazy that a lot of our fan base is happy that Oklahoma lost. But I look at it from the other side. I think that does you a huge favor going forward because realistically, you don't want to play Oklahoma twice back to back. So, if they lose and you end up having only played them once and then play Texas or whoever else in the Big 12 championship game, that bodes better for you. Not that West Virginia can't beat Oklahoma back-to-back, but it sure would be a hell of a lot easier to only have to beat Oklahoma one time rather than having to beat them back-to-back to end the regular season and then again in the Big 12 championship game.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Look, talent aside, I think, if you play Oklahoma twice back-to-back, being kids that have been on the team for multiple years, I think it's kind of a blockage in their mind. It might play, on their mind that they haven't beat them in how many years. So, you beat them once, that's great, but you get too high up on that win, you might not beat them next week. So I think, you're right. I think it does bode well for West Virginia moving forward that, they may play someone like TCU or Texas. I personally believe it'll be Texas playing in the Big 12 championship game.
I think so. I like what I've seen from them. And they've moved up a lot in the rankings, and I want to talk about those rankings for a minute because West Virginia is now up to 6th in the country in the AP poll and 6th in the country in the coaches poll. Highest ranking they've had since they were 5th in 2012. Playoffs weren't around back then, of course, but right now, looking at it realistically, of course, the college football playoff rankings don't come out for another 2 weeks, coming out in week 8, but looking at it from where West Virginia is right now, they're right on the fringe of that college football playoff conversation. As you know, it's the 4 teams, and they're 2 spots out right now at 6, so going forward, if West Virginia remains undefeated, they can probably get into this conversation, wouldn't you say?
I believe so. Especially with the schedules that Alabama and Georgia have to face moving forward. I think Notre Dame, with the win in Blacksburg this past weekend, is probably a lock in at 4-3. Mm-hmm. Clemson probably in there too. I think if none of those teams lose by the times that the rankings come out, I think West Virginia is probably looking at right on the outside, looking into number 5. But if West Virginia, might get lucky and one of those teams slips up, if one of those teams slip up and West Virginia's still undefeated when the rankings come out, there's no reason West Virginia shouldn't have that 4th or 3rd spot.
Absolutely. It's just really just a matter of West Virginia doing their part, winning the rest of their games, and then letting the chips fall where they may, because if they take care of them, I think there's a good chance that they've got a, in, week 7 we're going into, so, about 6 or 7 more weeks left in the season. If they win the rest of their games, there's a good chance that 2 teams above them are going to fall at some point, and they'll move up into got a great chance to move up into that and get into that college football playoff. They just got to worry about themselves and let the chips fall where they may. And speaking of worrying about themselves and going forward and going 1-0 every week, Mountaineers got a tough test on the road coming up on Saturday. Of course, we'll have our preview coming here later in the week on the Country Roads webcast. But going into Ames, night game, it's a tough place to play. They've upset a lot of people in the past, upset some high-ranked people in the past as well. And Iowa State's 2-3, I believe. but they're probably the best 2 and 3 team you'll see this season. They're really good, and I truly believe they got the ability to beat anybody in this conference. So it's a good test for the Mountaineers coming up this weekend. And what are your thoughts on that game, and maybe your prediction on that game as it stands right now?
I think it'll be a tough game in Ames. It's going to be a rowdy environment, being a night game. Them coming off that win against Oklahoma State this past weekend, that's going to give them some energy in this game. But I think West Virginia also has something to prove. I think the players for West Virginia probably hear this chatter within the fan base of them, not playing up to how they should play. I think that'll give them some motivation. I think West Virginia still wins this game by at least two touchdowns. But I think you're right. This Iowa State team is nothing to be, complacent about. I think we need to come out there and we have to have some energy in the first half. I think if we come out and we play well in the first half, I think that'll really quiet their crowd down, and we should be able to play really good throughout the rest of the 3 quarters, not turn the ball over.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think it's a game that West Virginia definitely can win, and if they do the things that in the way that they have and the way that we know that they can, it's a game they should hopefully come out on top of, and it'll be a good test down there in Ames, especially in the late game. That crowd will be ready, but hopefully we see the Mountaineers remain undefeated going forward. All right, having said that, Steven, I guess that pretty much wraps us up this time, and appreciate you for coming on, man. I always enjoy having you on here and getting your perspective and being our man in the stands here on the Country Roads Webcast, and hope to get you on here again soon as the season goes along, man.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. It's always a blast.
For sure. Let's go Mountaineers.
Let's go Mountaineers. Let's go be 6-0.
All right, so as always, great segment there with our man in the stands, Steven Vestal. Always enjoy having him on and getting his perspective. And just a little bit deeper dive into this game and to some of the concerns of the Mountaineer fan base and our opinions on what we feel is overreactions going forward. And just think this team's really special and that they're going to continue to do what they need to do. And as long as they're winning games, I don't see how us as fans have too much to complain about as long as we're coming out on top. 5-0 on the season. Got Iowa State coming up, tough test. Hopefully they can win that one and remain undefeated. But just enjoy this season as Mountaineer fans. That's the main thing that I can tell our listeners here on the Country Roads Webcast is this got a potential to be a special season and it has been up to this point. So we should really cherish it and enjoy it as it's happening. That being said, that'll wrap up this edition of the Country Roads Webcast, brought to you by Trio 4 Productions. If you haven't already, give us a follow on our Twitter page as we provide a lot of updates on there as well as live tweets during the West Virginia games. So be sure and give that a follow, and you can find it on Twitter by searching our handle at WVU Country Roads. And be on the lookout for our upcoming preview show coming later this week as we preview the Mountaineers' upcoming game against Iowa State. That being said, as always, I'm your host, Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
Are you ready to party? Country Roads.